My dear brothers and sisters, imagine standing before Allah on the day of judgment, believing your zakat al-fitr was accepted, only to discover it was rejected because you gave it to the wrong person. Imagine fasting the entire month of Ramadan, praying, making dua, seeking forgiveness, and then losing the reward of your charity because you followed emotions instead of guidance. This is not a small matter. Zakat al-fitr is an obligation, and if it is given incorrectly, your duty may not even be fulfilled. Today, we are going to speak about a mistake that many Muslims make every single year, and they do not even realize it. 1. Those who are wealthy, even if they claim hardship. My dear brothers and sisters, Zakat al-fitr is only for those who are truly poor and needy. It is not meant for someone who already has enough wealth to cover their basic needs. If a person owns money, gold, savings, business assets, or has a steady income that is more than what they require for daily living, and their wealth reaches or exceeds the nisab amount, then they are not eligible to receive zakat al-fitr. Even if that person is your brother, even if she is your married daughter, even if he is your uncle, family relationship does not change Islamic rulings. Sometimes people say, I am struggling, but when you look closely, they are not poor, they simply spend carelessly. They may have expensive phones, branded clothes, new furniture, or luxury habits, yet they still expect zakat before Eid. This is not real poverty. This is mismanagement of money. Islam does not classify someone as needy just because they want extra help for Eid shopping. True poverty means lacking essentials, food, shelter, clothing, and basic needs. If a person can comfortably provide for themselves and their family, they are not eligible for zakat al-fitr. The Prophet ﷺ clearly taught that charity is not permissible for the wealthy or for someone strong and capable of earning. If a person is healthy, able to work, and has the means to earn a living, they should strive, not rely on zakat. Do not let guilt, pressure, or emotional manipulation push you to give where it is not allowed. Acts of worship must follow Allah's guidance, not people's expectations. 2. Your parents and grandparents. My dear brothers and sisters, one of the biggest misunderstandings people have is thinking they can give their zakat al-fitr to their parents or grandparents if they are struggling financially. This is not correct. You are not allowed to give your zakat al-fitr to your mother, your father, your grandmother, or your grandfather, even if they are poor. Why? Because Islam has already placed their responsibility on you. If your parents are in need, it is not optional for you to help them. It is your duty. Allah has commanded kindness and financial support toward parents, especially when they grow older or become weak. Supporting them is not charity. It is an obligation. It is an honor. It is a responsibility that Allah will question you about. Zakat is meant to go to those people whom you are not already financially responsible for. If you give your zakat al-fitr to your parents, you are essentially using obligatory charity to fulfill a personal obligation. Most scholars explain that this does not count as valid zakat because you are required to support them anyway. If your father cannot afford his expenses, you must spend on him from your own wealth. If your mother struggles to buy food or medicine, you must take care of her from your earnings. That is your duty as a child. You cannot shift that responsibility onto zakat. And think about it carefully. If zakat were allowed for parents, many people would simply give their zakat to their own household and avoid helping the wider poor community. Islam ensures that zakat circulates beyond your immediate financial circle so that more people benefit. This does not mean you should not help your parents. On the contrary, you should give them generously. You should spend on them happily. You should never make them feel like a burden. But that support must come from your personal wealth, not from your zakat al-fitr. Remember, caring for your parents is one of the greatest acts of worship in Islam. It brings immense reward, but it must be done correctly. Do not confuse obligation with charity. Do not mix personal responsibility with zakat. May Allah make us among those who honor and support our parents in the best way possible. 3. Your children and grandchildren. My dear brothers and sisters, just as you cannot give your zakat al-fitr to your parents, you also cannot give it to your children or grandchildren. This applies whether they are young or adults, married or unmarried, studying or working. If you are financially responsible for them, zakat al-fitr cannot be given to them. Islam places clear financial responsibilities within the family structure. A father is obligated to provide for his children. This includes food, clothing, shelter, education, and basic living expenses. If your son is unemployed and struggling, it is your duty to support him if you have the means. If your daughter is facing hardship, especially if she is unmarried or dependent, you are responsible for helping her. That responsibility does not disappear simply because Eid has arrived. Zakat al-Fitr is an act of worship meant to assist the poor outside your circle of direct financial obligation. It is not a tool to manage your household expenses. It is not meant to reduce your personal responsibility. If a father gives his Zakat al-Fitr to his own dependent child, he is essentially giving money back into his own household. Scholars explain that this defeats the purpose of zakat because it does not truly transfer wealth to those outside your obligation. Some people misunderstand this. They think, my son is an adult now, so I can give him zakat. But if he is still financially dependent on you, if you are still expected to provide for him, then zakat is not valid for him. Even if your daughter is married but you are still supporting her because her husband cannot provide, you must be careful and consult a scholar before giving zakat in such a situation. The general rule is clear. You cannot give zakat to those whom you are obligated to maintain. This ruling protects the dignity and fairness of zakat. Imagine if every wealthy parent simply distributed their zakat within their own home. The wider poor community would be neglected. Islam ensures that zakat reaches those who truly have no one responsible for them. This does not mean you should not help your children generously. On the contrary, you should support them with love, patience, and sincerity. Helping your children in hardship is a noble act and carries reward, but it must come from your own wealth, not from Zakat al-Fitr. Understand the wisdom here, my dear brothers and sisters. Zakat is not a shortcut for family responsibility. It is a sacred obligation designed to uplift the broader community. Fulfill your duties toward your children with your own earnings and give your zakat where Allah has allowed it to be given. May Allah grant us understanding and allow us to fulfill every obligation correctly and sincerely. 4. Your spouse. My dear brothers and sisters, another very important category that many people misunderstand is the ruling regarding giving zakat al-fitr to your spouse. Many assume that because a husband and wife are separate individuals, it should be permissible to give zakat to one another. But Islamic rulings are not based on assumptions. They are based on responsibility, obligation, and clear principles. Let us begin with the husband. A husband is Islamically obligated to financially maintain his wife. This responsibility is not optional, it is not cultural, it is not dependent on her income. It is a divine command. Allah has placed the duty of provision upon the husband. He must provide food, clothing, shelter, and her basic needs according to his ability. Even if the wife is wealthy, even if she earns more than her husband, he is still responsible for her maintenance. Now think carefully. If a husband gives his zakat al-fitr to his wife, what is he actually doing? He is giving zakat money to someone whose expenses he is already obligated to cover. In reality, the money remains within his own financial responsibility. It does not truly leave his circle of obligation. For this reason, scholars state clearly that a husband cannot give his zakat to his wife because he is already responsible for her financial care. Some men may think, but my wife is struggling personally, or she has her own expenses. That may be true, but those expenses are still your responsibility as her husband. Zakat cannot be used as a substitute for your duty. Zakat is not a way to reduce your personal financial burden. It is an act of worship meant to help those who are not under your financial care. Now let us discuss the wife giving zakat to her husband. This is slightly more detailed, and scholars have discussed it carefully. In principle, a wife is not financially obligated to maintain her husband. Therefore, some scholars have allowed a wife to give zakat to her husband if he is genuinely poor and eligible because she is not responsible for his expenses. However, there is an important condition. The zakat must not return to her indirectly in a way that benefits her financially. For example, if she gives him zakat and he uses it immediately to pay household expenses that she is also benefiting from, then the matter becomes questionable. Some scholars say it is still valid if he is truly poor and owns the money independently. Others advise caution to avoid doubt. Because of this scholarly difference, many scholars advise that it is safer and better to give zakat outside of the immediate marital relationship unless there is a clear and genuine case of need. Understand the wisdom behind this ruling. Marriage creates a shared financial environment. In most cases, the wealth of the husband and wife affects the same household. Zakat is designed to circulate wealth to the broader poor community, not to rotate it within the same household structure. There is also another important point. Sometimes a husband may feel embarrassed to accept zakat from his wife. It can create tension, pride issues, or emotional imbalance in the marriage. Islam protects the dignity of relationships. Zakat should uplift, not create discomfort or hidden resentment. My dear brothers and sisters, the principle is simple. Zakat al-Fitr must be given to those who are truly eligible and outside your direct financial responsibility. A husband cannot give it to his wife because he must already provide for her. A wife giving it to her husband is a matter of scholarly discussion, but caution is advised. Do not treat zakat as a flexible family fund. It is not family redistribution. It is an act of worship with specific boundaries. When Allah sets limits, those limits protect justice, fairness, and wisdom. If your spouse is struggling, help them generously from your own wealth. Support each other, strengthen your marriage, but do not confuse personal support with zakat al-fitr unless it clearly fulfills the conditions set by Islamic law. Remember, acts of worship are accepted when they are done sincerely and correctly. Good intentions alone are not enough. Knowledge must guide compassion. May Allah grant us understanding, purify our wealth, and allow us to give our zakat in the way that pleases Him most. Ameen. 5. Those from the direct family line of the Prophet ﷺ, Banu Hashim. My dear brothers and sisters, this is a topic that many people do not fully understand, and because of that, they may make mistakes without even realizing it. According to the majority of scholars, zakat, including zakat al-fitr, is not permissible for the direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who are known as Banu Hashim. This includes those who trace their lineage back to the family of the Prophet ﷺ through authentic and recognized genealogy. Why is this the case? It is not because they are better than others in terms of wealth. It is not because they do not face hardship. It is not because they are automatically rich. In fact, many among them may be poor. The reason is something deeper. The Prophet ﷺ himself clearly said that charity, meaning obligatory zakat, is not permissible for the family of Muhammad. He described zakat as the purification of people's wealth, and Allah honored His household by preventing them from taking from it. Scholars explain that zakat is considered the purification of people's earnings. It is taken from wealth to cleanse it. Allah gave a special honor to the Prophet's family by making it impermissible for them to receive this form of charity. Instead, historically, they were given a share from other sources such as the public treasury. This was a distinction granted to them. Now here is where people become confused. They think, but what if someone from that lineage is poor? What if they are struggling? The answer is that they can be supported but not through zakat. They can receive voluntary charity, gifts, sadaqah that is not obligatory, and financial help from other lawful means. You can support them generously, you can assist them quietly, you can help them in their hardship, but you should not give them your zakat al-fitr according to the majority opinion of scholars. Some scholars have discussed differences of opinion in certain situations, especially in places where there is no Islamic treasury or official state system. However, the dominant and safest view remains that zakat is not to be given to the direct descendants of the Prophet ﷺ. This ruling also protects the dignity of the Prophet's family. It prevents them from being seen as dependent upon obligatory charity. It preserves their honor in society. Islam places balance in everything. It honors people without elevating them unfairly, and it protects systems without creating injustice. Now be careful here. Not everyone who claims lineage truly has it. In some communities, people may claim to be from the Prophet's family without clear evidence. This is a serious matter and should not be taken lightly. If someone is genuinely from Banu Hashim and this is known with certainty, then you follow the ruling. If there is doubt, you consult scholars in your region. My dear brothers and sisters, this is not about status. This is about obedience. Zakat is a sacred obligation with specific categories defined in the Quran. Allah clearly mentions the recipients of zakat in Surah At-Tawbah. We do not add to those categories and we do not change them based on emotion. If someone from the Prophet's lineage is struggling, help them through voluntary charity. Support them privately. Preserve their dignity. But do not give them zakat al-fitr if you are following the majority scholarly view. Remember, worship is not accepted merely because we feel good about it. It is accepted when it aligns with the guidance of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu. Good intentions must be guided by correct knowledge. When we give zakat properly, we protect our akhirah. When we follow the rules as they were revealed, we show that our loyalty is to Allah, not to social pressure. May Allah grant us understanding of our religion, protect us from mistakes in our acts of worship, and allow us to give zakat in a way that is pure, correct, and accepted. Ameen. 6. Those who will use the money for open sin and refuse to change. My dear brothers and sisters, this final category is extremely sensitive and it requires wisdom, balance and sincerity. Zakat al-Fitr is an act of worship. It is not just financial help. It is purification, it is obedience, it is something that connects your Ramadan to your akhirah. Because of that, you must be careful that your zakat does not become a means of supporting sin or strengthening wrongdoing. If a person openly lives in sin, and you know with certainty that whatever money you give them will be used to support haram activities, then you are not allowed to give your zakat al-fitr to them. Zakat is meant to relieve hardship, not to fund destruction. Think carefully about this. If someone is addicted to drugs and whenever they receive money, they immediately use it to buy narcotics, giving them zakat in the form of cash that will directly go toward that addiction is not helping them. It is harming them. It is not charity. It becomes indirect cooperation in sin. Allah clearly tells us in the Quran not to help one another in sin and transgression. But this matter requires balance. We are not told to judge people harshly. We are not told to assume the worst about everyone. We are not told to investigate people's private lives suspiciously. Islam teaches us to act based on what is apparent and what is reasonably certain. If someone is known openly in the community for misusing money for gambling, alcohol, drugs or criminal behavior, and this is consistent and clear, then you must think carefully before giving them zakat in a form that they can misuse. Zakat is not simply about transferring money, it is about fulfilling a divine responsibility. If you knowingly give your zakat to someone who will use it to commit wrongdoing, then you are not fulfilling the purpose of zakat. Instead of reducing hardship, you are enabling self-destruction. However, this does not mean we abandon people who are struggling with sin. This is where wisdom becomes essential. There is a difference between someone who sins but is trying to change and someone who is proud of their sin and determined to continue in it. There is a difference between someone who fell into addiction and wants help and someone who rejects advice and uses every opportunity to continue harming themselves and others. If a person is sincerely trying to recover from addiction, sincerely seeking help, sincerely wanting to leave wrongdoing, then assisting them in a way that truly helps their recovery can be rewardable. But the assistance must be structured wisely. Instead of handing cash directly, you might pay for food, groceries, rent, or medical treatment directly. You might support them through safe channels that ensure the zakat reaches legitimate needs without being misused. Islam encourages reform and mercy, but not recklessness. Compassion must be guided by intelligence. You are responsible for how you discharge your zakat. You are not responsible for someone's hidden intentions, but you are responsible for obvious outcomes. Some people misunderstand this point and become extreme. They begin to say, this person sins, so they do not deserve zakat. That is not correct. If sin alone disqualified someone, then almost no one would qualify. Every human being sins. Poverty does not require perfection. A poor Muslim who commits sins is still eligible if they fall under the Quranic categories of recipients. The key issue is not whether they sin. The key issue is whether your zakat will directly fuel that sin. If a person is poor but responsible, even if they struggle spiritually, they may still be eligible. But if a person is using wealth openly and repeatedly for destructive purposes, and you know your zakat will immediately strengthen that behavior, then you must not give it in that manner. Let us also remember that zakat al-fitr is usually given before Eid so that the poor can celebrate with dignity.